Hello everybody, welcome to Impact. I'm Nick Barber, your host for the government segment. And today my guest is Robert Porter, commonly known as Bar. That's his bike name, his road name. But Robert Porter today is here as a candidate for the Common Council of the City of Albany. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can I call you Bob, Bar, or Robert?
Bar, please.
We'll call you Bar. Okay. I know you as Bar. You've been here before. You're not a stranger to Impact.
Yes.
Today we're going to talk about your candidacy for the Common Council, it's called in Albany.
Correct.
In Schenectady, it's called the City Council. There's all different names, aldermen and so forth. But I guess the official title is the Common Council, and that's the city government for the city of Albany.
That's correct.
We visited a while before we talked about this, and my question was, and it would be to the viewing audience, what made you decide to run for the Common Council in the city of Albany?
Well, after returning, after 21 years in the Marine Corps, I saw that Albany had declined. You drive down Central Avenue and almost every business is boarded up or closed, going out of business. There's no traffic on the street, nobody's parked on the street, going into any of the shops. And I thought it was a shame because Albany is a beautiful town. And so I decided that I would get involved in politics and try and turn that around.
Mm-hmm. It's the capital of our state, too. It's an
the capital,
important city,
yes.
A big legislative center. What parties are you running on? I mean, in order to run for office, you know, Politics 101, you have to be on the ballot. So how do you get yourself on the ballot, and what kind of support do you have at this point?
Well, I was approached by the Republican Party, which I'm a member of, and they asked me if I wanted to run for office this term, and I agreed, and I live in the 9th Ward, so I'm running for the 9th Ward in the Common Council. Mm-hmm. The candidate, or the incumbent, Jim Sano, had petitions put out by the Democratic Party for him to rerun as a candidate. Mm-hmm. At the last minute, 4 days before the petitions were due at the Board of Elections, Jim Sano announced that he wasn't going to accept the nomination and was not going to run for re-election. In that instance, what would occur is the committee that's in place to put another candidate on the ballot decided to run another Democrat. This being said, 2 other Democrats who didn't want to oppose the party decided that they wanted to run because he wasn't going to run again. And they had 4 days to get approximately 130 signatures.
Oh, wow.
From registered Democrats in the ward,
yes,
to get on the ballot. They were able to do this.
They made it?
Now,
Yep.
The party stepped back, and instead of endorsing the person that they put on the ballot to replace Jim Sano, they now want a primary.
Who wants a primary? I know the
The
candidates.
Democratic Party does.
They do want a primary.
Right.
Okay.
They try. The way I look at it is they try to pull a fast one on the voters. They dangled.
Well, right. Apparently, I'm sure it's all within the election law. They can do these things. But,
it is.
But I wouldn't say the moral, but the fair thing to do is...
The appropriate thing would have been to do is say, at the beginning of the petitioning time, Jim Sano should have said, I'm not going to run for re-election, and open it up to any Democrat within the 9th Ward who wanted to run.
Thanks for your past support, and it's a new day.
Right. And then what he would have done is the normal thing that would have happened is he would have endorsed one of those candidates.
Right.
That's the normal thing.
Yes.
But they didn't do the normal thing. They tried to do something backdoor or underhanded, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And
not illegal, but it's not really kosher either. Right?
Force a candidate on the voters that they didn't want.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that's fair.
Yeah. That would eliminate, as we said before, the people's choice. That's the way you put it. That's
right,
true,
the people's
because,
choice.
I mean, what's the biggest right? One of the greatest rights of freedom we have here is the freedom to vote, the right to vote and elect our representatives. So what did this sort of backfire on them when the other 2 candidates wanted to run a primary?
Of course.
So it screwed up their plan, if there's such a plan?
It seems to have thrown a monkey wrench into their plan.
Right.
And so now they're going to have a primary. They're not backing any one of the candidates.
So how many people will be in that primary?
3.
3.
On the Democratic line.
All right. So what's that going to do for you? That might help you.
Well,
as an opposing candidate.
It could
well, they're
show.
going to spend a lot of money and time and energy trying to duke it out with each other.
Well, the thing is what it could show is to the loyal Democrats. It could say, your opinion doesn't matter to our campaign. We're going to tell you who you vote for.
Yeah.
You have no choice. And that's the way it normally is. The party doesn't come out and come to you or me and say, yeah, we have an opening. Who would you like to see? Do you know anybody that would be a good candidate and a good politician? And they don't. They say, this is who it's going to be.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, then leave.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's right. I think the people should choose. I think
Yeah.
more people should be involved in politics and get out there and change and get rid of the career politicians that are driving this country down the drain.
Yes, it's always good to have new blood, new ideas. There's been a lot of discussion on term limits, not just on the local level, but all the way up to the federal level, especially the local. I mean, I served in public office on a local level. I didn't look at it as a lifetime career. You know, I ran 3 times, I had 12 years, and pretty much that was enough. Some people locally go beyond that, but there's a lot of debate on what we call career politicians.
Well,
And term limits is not a bad idea, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem to stick. You know, there's a lot of
the
discussion.
unfortunate thing is
I mean,
politicians today, one term is going to get you a retirement. So you do 2 or 4 years in local politics or state politics,
Yeah.
and you've got a pension.
yeah,
Whereas somebody working at McDonald's at minimum wage is never going to have a pension.
yeah,
And Social Security isn't going to be there for them in 20 years.
yeah,
It's gone.
yeah. Well, we hope it's not gone, but it's sure
It's going down
it's
fast.
going downhill, and it's
The amazing thing is Social Security, the day it was enacted, it was signed into law, the first person put on Social Security had not paid a single penny into the system. So it was already running at a deficit.
Yes, yes, and they've been borrowing against. That's a whole other issue. We should talk about that sometime.
Yep.
But the issue in local government, sure, people, career politicians or long-term politicians want to beef up a pension, yada yada. Some local levels, it may even be a requirement that they have to be in the system for 10 years or something like that. But basically, that's one of the attractions to people who run for office. I don't know. I guess maybe people run for office for the wrong reasons. You know, the right reasons are like yourself. You want to get involved. There should be new blood. You have new ideas. You want to make change. You see things that aren't working right, and you want to try to fix them.
Yeah.
And that's the real reason to run for office, to help the public and the jurisdiction that you're hoping to represent to make things better, to have a better government. I used to say there's 2 kinds of public officials, or elected public officials. Public-serving public officials and self-serving public officials. And the one that the communities are looking for are the public-serving public officials.
I call them statesmen.
Statesmen. That's great. Right.
Because they've put the
Days
state
of Yore.
before themselves.
Yeah, days of yore. Right, statesmen. Like I don't know if you saw Lincoln. I know
Yeah.
you're a Republican. What a fantastic film that was. But the thing that impressed me the most was the process and the political background and the things that had to be done to get, you know, a big amendment to the Constitution or any legislation. The acting was great. I love Daniel Day-Lewis. Met him, but the process of government, even back then, was like astounding. What
Well,
they had to do to get votes and how Lincoln was so tenacious.
The good thing about
But he was doing it for the higher good.
what I
As a
liked
matter of fact,
about
it was unpopular. It was going to hurt him.
yes,
And he was advised not to do this, to go to this 13th Amendment. That's a statesman.
yes.
You know?
What I liked about our founding fathers, the first presidential elections, it was between the 3 candidates. And unlike today, first place took presidency. Second place became vice president. So you could have a Republican as the president and a vice president as a Democrat.
So a lot of people don't realize that.
A lot of people don't
that's how
realize
it
that.
works.
And so today, now presidents are not just elected on who they're not just voting for who the president is. You now have to vote who's going to be the vice president. And that can hurt or help a candidate running
Yes.
for office.
Yes. What other support do you have? You said the Republicans approached you.
Right.
And that's a compliment in itself, to come up to someone and say, look, at our party, regardless of what political party it is, our party has observed you. We know a little bit about you. We think you'd be a great candidate, and we'd like you to join us, and we'd like to support you for public office. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So you must have impressed them somehow.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's good.
And then
Who else do you have support from?
I also have a line on the ballot from the Conservative Party.
Okay. Conservative Party used to be the big deal breaker, the party in between the major parties that would actually swing an election.
Yep.
I don't know how big they are in the state now. There's a Conservative and Independence Party.
Well, in
too,
Albany, in my
but they're
ward,
still pretty influential.
in my ward, the Conservative Party and the Independent Party are probably about equal in size.
Yep.
And so, with the Republican line and the Conservative line, I have a pretty good chance.
Yes.
Of getting quite a few votes.
Based on the enrollments, yeah.
And what I'm doing right now is I'm also a member of the Libertarian Party.
Yes.
The Libertarian Party, a lot of people aren't aware of it. We want to cut back the federal government, cut back the state government to smaller, more manageable government. Not these institutions that keep growing and growing and are a cancer. A good example for the state is we have the Department of Transportation, New York State Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
And they manage all the roads in New York State.
Yeah.
Oops, wait. But then we created the the Thruway Department.
Yes.
And they manage the Thruway.
Yes.
And so the two aren't working together. They don't cross over. And they're two giant organizations that spend money.
Yes.
Now, when it was initially started, the Thruway Department, it had a life expectancy. It had a term limit. What happened? It started making money. It grew. And so the government said, well, we're going to keep all these jobs. Well, all those government jobs require taxpayers. And before 9/11, New York State was in the top 10 earning states in the United States. After 9/11, New York State has dropped down to like the bottom 10. We don't have money.
Yeah.
People are fleeing New York State. Businesses are fleeing New York State. The big state that everybody's going to is Texas. Because because of freedoms, because of less rules and regulations.
Yeah.
It's a freer state. And so people are going there because the businesses aren't being taxed to death.
Yeah.
The citizens aren't being taxed to death, and they're getting their rights back.
Yes.
And so people are leaving New York State, and we're spending like we still had them here, and we don't.
We don't have the base and the support to tax and spend like we did before because taxpayers are leaving. Is that what you're saying?
There's only 3 counties in New York State that are not in the red.
Is that true?
That's
because I was in county government, but I never heard that statistic.
When I first moved back, it was in the Times Union, I believe, and one county was Saratoga. The other county was Warren County, Saratoga because of the racetrack.
Right.
Warren County, Lake George because of Americade.
Yeah.
The hundreds of thousands of motorcycles that come to the state every year.
Yes.
And you know I'm a motorcycle rights advocate.
Yes. Yep.
There would be more motorcyclists.
We can mention that.
There would be more motorcyclists coming to that event
Yeah.
and spending more money as tourists in New York State if there wasn't a helmet law.
Yeah. I just want to mention to the audience, you're the president of the Albany chapter of ABATE, too.
Correct.
And that's a legislative community and organization.
American bikers aim towards education.
Aim towards education, and we talked about that last time. And that's actually a good credential and background for you, too.
Yep.
And you're a U.S. Marine.
Yes.
How many years did you serve in the Marine Corps?
21 years, 4 months, and 20 days.
Wow. So you were a career guy then. Over
I
20.
did the extra year and a half so I could do a combat tour in Iraq. I could have retired at 20.
Yes.
I felt that my career was not complete without serving in Iraq or Afghanistan.
That's admirable of you. Thank you. Thank you for serving. I know you hear it a lot, but that's admirable that you stayed to take a tour in combat.
And then halfway through my tour, there was a big change in Iraq, and the Army moved out of Al-Anbar, which is the western provinces, and moved into Baghdad, and turned over Al-Anbar to the Marine Corps. Well, several of the projects there were training the Iraqi police, training the Iraqi Army, training the Iraqi border patrols.
Yeah.
And with my experience in law enforcement as a drill instructor and a military police instructor, I volunteered to go train the Iraqi police in what's called the police transition team.
Oh,
There's only one job more dangerous in Iraq than that, and that's EOD, defusing the bombs.
yes.
Very high casualty rate, very high mortality rate,
Yes.
because you are not on an installation. You're not on a safe camp surrounded by barbed wire and fences and Marines. You're living in the middle of a town of Iraqis, and you have a dozen Marines to protect you and the police. Now, we just had a colonel in the Army who was killed in Afghanistan by his own police officers. That's the threat that you live in. And when you're sleeping or you're walking or you're doing any of your duties out there, at any time, one of these officers, who could be an insurgent or a Taliban, could just turn on you and shoot you. And
That's the fear. I mean, all I know is what I've read and what you tell me now, but I mean, they were hated. I mean, it was, the locals, if they went with the police and they were being trained by the Americans, they weren't very popular.
yeah,
By the Taliban and by the bad guys, you know.
the amazing thing is this is something that a lot of people aren't aware of. Back in 2006, there was a pizzeria on Central Ave in Albany where the two owners were arrested by the FBI
I recall that, yes.
for trying to buy a shoulder-fired missile to shoot down an airplane at Albany County Airport. Well, these two Arabic gentlemen had been contacting Iraq for their instructions. They had contacted the town of Rawa, which is the retirement community for the Ba'ath Party, Saddam Hussein's party.
Wow.
And they were getting their instructions from them there.
Yes.
That's where I was training Iraqi police.
You were there.
I was there.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting there, and it wasn't my job to go through the intelligence of what's being transmitted and what's not being transmitted. But I was able to overhear one time the name Albany.
You did.
And so
Wow, that must have knocked you off
I'm
your
sitting
feet.
there, and
Yeah, Albany.
in this
Yeah.
instance, we're not supposedly talking about the United States. We're talking about what's occurring in the town and the intelligence that's going on in the town and the insurgent activity in the town.
Yeah.
And his name is mentioned. And I had no idea why. It could have been Albany, Georgia. It could have been Albany,
Right.
New York. I didn't know, and it wasn't my place to ask because it wasn't my mission. And it wasn't until I came home
Wow.
and I saw the reports of what occurred that I put the two together.
Then
and
the
I realized
light bulb went off, and
and if we hadn't been there, we never would have found this information out.
Yep.
And there would have been a 9/11 incident at the Albany County Airport.
my God, boy, that's an amazing story. We're visiting with Robert Porter, is commonly known as his road name Bar. Robert Porter, Bar, is running for the Common Council for the City of Albany. You're watching Impact. I'm your host, Nick Barber, and we're going to continue with our discussion about your Common Council quest here in the City of Albany. Do you have any other platforms or issues that you want to talk about while we're here?
I go to the Common Council meetings when I'm able. The last one I went to, Jim Sano, the incumbent who's not running again, decided not to run, had set forth several resolutions to be voted on by the Common Council.
Yeah.
I recall a few of them. The first one was a resolution to raise $800,000 to replace all the traffic control lights in the city of Albany. Now, they're old lights. They're not the new digital LED lights.
Yeah.
But to replace them all when the city of Albany is running at a $12 million deficit, we have to borrow, the city of Albany, to balance its budget, has to borrow $12 million from the state of New York. So we're running at a deficit. We're getting loaned $12 million a year. And he wants to spend $800,000 to buy new traffic lights. Doesn't make any sense to me.
That's a significant number, 1/12, almost 10% of that
Well,
debt. You know,
the-
it's
and-
almost
and-
$1 million.
and then
Probably
then-
will be in government. If you say
Well,
800,000, there's
since-
always cost over. You know what I mean?
Since you brought that up,
Yeah, go ahead.
the next resolution was for $200,000
There you go. 1 million.
to replace
Yeah.
all the traffic lights on Western Avenue.
Okay.
They weren't included in the 800,000.
Oh,
So
okay.
it is $1 million.
So now it is in actuality $1 million.
Yep.
Bingo. What is this like a safety or a issue or a hazard or something? I mean, I know they're old, but the lights are functional. Was there some kind of audit or state report that said this is like bridges? You know how they inspect bridges and they say, well, this bridge is condemned or this bridge has to be done or whatever. What prompted this person to say, well, we should replace them all and spend this $1 million? I mean,
it's not mentioned.
just because they're not pretty?
They decided.
Yeah. I could see if there was an urgent need, there was health or safety issues, somebody could get killed, traffic issues. But it'd be important to ask what the reasoning is behind this and the need.
In the resolution,
When you could be feeding people, you could be having human services programs or fixing streets that are hazardous, something
Streets
where
are
there's real
terrible in
safety.
Albany. We all know that.
You know, Capital District's an old area, and you know we have issues in Schenectady too. You know, and that's a big expense.
In Albany,
to
there's
pave and do curbs and stuff, and it's usually a capital thing.
in Albany, there's 3 organizations that maintain the roads.
Yeah.
And the 3 organizations don't work in the same office and don't talk to each other.
Libertarian Party. Here we talk about shrinking government. So you have 3 organizations.
3 different ones that manage it and don't talk to each other.
Well,
when they're asked how much it costs to repair the roads in Albany every year,
Yeah.
they don't know.
They don't know.
They don't have a expenditure report.
Yeah.
So they just do this hodgepodge at random whenever they feel, and they don't know how long it lasts. They don't know how much it costs, and they don't really know anything about it. They just do it until they can't do it anymore, until they run out of whatever the resources are.
Well, there's a good example of consolidation or elimination. I mean, people always go, oh, how many years, 20, 30 years, local governments talk about consolidation of government, consolidate, and they have studies, and we have studies in this county, in this city, but very, very few people actually are able to achieve consolidation. So again, we're visiting with Robert Porter, his road name and commonly known as Barr, but on the ballot you will be Robert Porter.
Correct.
On the Republican Party, the Conservative Party,
and the Libertarian
Party in the city of Albany. So Barr, how does someone get a hold of you, Robert Porter, candidate for Common Council in the city, if they want to discuss issues with you? Do you have a contact email or website or something?
Yes, like everybody else, I have a Facebook page.
Facebook, okay.
And so I have my personal Facebook page, was Robert G. Porter.
Okay.
I also have a page dedicated to my candidacy, and that's Robert Barr Porter. So people who know me by both names will at least see both names on there.
So on Facebook, you have 2 ways to get a hold of Robert G. Porter, Albany, New York, and Robert Barr, B-A-R Porter, is a candidate page.
Yes.
Okay, so go to Facebook and look them up. I'm Nick Barber, your host. You've been watching Impact. We want to thank you again, Barr, for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Impact, and we'll see you next time.
Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.